Hello, and welcome to the SharePoint Framework, a JavaScript Special Interest Group Biweekly SIG. It is August 12th, 2021. Unbelievable. We're almost halfway through August at this point. I think it is still March of 2020 myself. I don't believe it. Agenda for today, latest updates on SharePoint Framework, patterns and practices updates across the program, new community samples, picture time with Together mode, and we've got 3 great demos today. Of course, Julie and Derek will be showing us executive room reservation tool for Teams built with SPFx. Hugo, I think just Hugo will be showing us the My List notification SPFx extension, and Giuliano will be showing us using OneDrive apps folder in order to save user preferences cross-device. So a very cool technique there. Excited to see that. So, but first, always like to talk about opportunities to participate in these calls and the Patterns and Practices program all up. So if you're interested in demoing on these calls, it's my favorite part of the calls is getting the demos. Please just reach out to myself or Vesa. We'd love to have you on the calls, either this one or any of the others to do a demo. Please just reach out. I know everybody's doing some great work for their companies, their customers, and as is appropriate, of course, make sure it's okay to show off what you're demoing, but as appropriate, would love to have you reach out and demo your work on the calls. Also, you can always contribute on GitHub. That could take the form of reporting issues, submitting pull requests, or helping with issues and questions. And then as always, we appreciate your feedback. How are our calls? How's our documentation? Where else can we help? And positive feedback is okay too. If you like something, let us know. Perhaps we can do a little bit more of it. And now the giant page of links. So we've got a bunch of stuff here. So the developer videos are silly to say that, but developer-focused videos or topic-focused videos around things such as auth, or how to set up a SharePoint Framework project, or how to get started with Graph, things like that. They're sort of topic-focused videos for learning. We also have our community videos, which are going to be the recordings of this call, and our other community calls can all be found there, whether you want to review a call or catch up on some calls you might have missed. You can always catch up on those there on the YouTube channel. As well, we've got a bunch of great open source organizations on GitHub, all of which are open to your contributions, open to your feedback, and open to you reporting issues as well. Those are SharePoint, PnP, Office Dev, and Microsoft Graph. So all 4 of those are absolutely looking for your participation and feedback. Join in to as many of those as you are interested in. I think there's a lot of great work happening across all of those and a lot of interesting stuff to get involved in, depending on what you personally find fascinating. And then we've got sample galleries. We've got team samples, SPFx samples, SPFx web part samples, SPFx extension samples. We've got Power Platform samples and list formatting samples. These are great places to start if you've got a new project or you've got a question, on your team about how you might go about solving a certain problem. The sample galleries are a great place to start and get ideas on how others have solved similar problems and give you a path to go down to explore how you might solve, your problems you're trying to program for. And then finally, instead of remembering all those links, you can always just remember aka.ms/m365pnp. That's going to take you to the Patterns and Practices landing page, which will give you information about the program as well as links to all of the content we have just mentioned. We do have, this is quickly coming to an end, this slide, because starting in, I believe, September, or I guess on the 31st of August, actually, we're going to have a whole new sort of lineup of calls that we hope is going to be a little easier for folks to follow, a little bit easier for folks to attend, and a little bit less overlap and confusion perhaps across all of these calls. So making it a little bit easier to find the content and as well stay informed without having to attend just calls all week long every week. So trying to get things a little more organized for everybody. That's a piece of feedback we heard, and we are trying to act on that. And this is Sharing is Caring, which is David.
Thanks, Patrick. Absolutely. Sharing is Caring is a program that is available to everyone in the community to help you get more involved from not only using the tools, but contributing to the tools. So if you're unfamiliar, it is inclusive and safe space opportunities that are scheduled every month for you to join with members of the Patterns and Practices and Sharing is Caring team, folks like Hugo Bernier, April Dunham, Louise Fries, and myself. And we will walk you through a whole host of things that you might want to start getting involved in, such as contributing, understanding how to use GitHub, using and setting up your SPFx workstation, getting involved as a presenter. As Patrick mentioned, we'd love to have you present on these calls, but you might want some tips and tricks. So a number of opportunities. We've got a plethora of AMAs coming up in September. We hope you enjoy those. We have got a lot of great feedback on them. It's a great collaboration opportunity. Again, all free, all safe space opportunities for you to ask any and all questions, no recording of the sessions at all, and we will assist you on getting involved. And when you do, as we move to the next slide, we love nothing more than to celebrate you. And so you have seen, hopefully, the recognition program that we have brought out. It is powered by Credly. We are here to showcase the contributions that you are making. And Credly is the platform in which the Microsoft certification badges are ran on. And so your PnP community badges will sit right next to those. And the first, as you can see there on the screen, is the badge that is currently being provided for the year 2021, but we have a whole host of other campaigns that we're going to be releasing as we get further into the year, things like a Hacktoberfest and some fun Parker-themed badges and contribution badges for things like samples, upgrading and submitting, etc. So we need you to opt in for that and register for it, aka.ms M365 PnP recognition. We would love to celebrate you, so please don't hesitate. There's no cost to you, and we look forward to sending you your badge. Patrick, back to you.
Thanks, David, and really appreciate you all hosting that plethora of AMAs. It means a lot. Next up is SharePoint Framework updates with Vesa.
Excellent. Let's move to the following slide. So the big updates, obviously, during the summertime, not that many things are happening, but we did announce the Viva Connection public preview. So the SharePoint Framework 1.13 preview or beta version is out, and that was announced like a few weeks back. And we are seeing some level of people testing that. And of course, as part of the Viva Connection rollout plans, we will then release the Viva SharePoint Framework 1.13 whenever we get all of these functionalities available. Now, word of a warning on here, when you start using this thing, it only gives you the capability of building these Viva Connection cards in the online workbench for now, which is slightly confusing because you would like to see the mobile experience, you would like to see the better experience. All of that is coming, and we will communicate more broadly when those are available, I think in the September timeframe. Now let's go to the following slides, and just a quick recap. Given September timeframe, most likely preview. I think that's pretty okay to say. But I can't be more specific on that. Now, 1.13, like I said, it's going to be going to GA as aligned with the Viva Connection GA, Viva Connection Mobile GA. The Viva Connection Desktop was released earlier this year, but this is now a evolution of that. We still work on significant Teams improvements on SPFx. So internally, we talk about SharePoint Framework Everywhere concept, which is basically you can build SharePoint Framework and host it everywhere, including Viva and Teams, and obviously making that more easily available. We're seeing a lot of interest on the SharePoint Framework in general because it's so easy to host things and the operations are easy. Of course, if you are a existing SaaS provider, it does make sense to do the integration in a slightly different way. What's else in here? Store modernization is rolling out right now, just to call out that one. So we will post blog post on that one early next week, and you will see more communications coming on that. So the SharePoint store is getting fully modernized, one step at a time. First from the store experience perspective, then the app catalog and a few other things as well. But you'll see more on those changes coming up in autumn. Throwing it back to you, Patrick.
Thank you, Vesa, for those updates. I've been doing a little bit of ACE Dev over the last couple of weeks, and it's really kind of a lot of fun. So I encourage folks to check that out. I think it's going to be a great new way to kind of build out some solutions, and I'm excited for more folks to try that out. And I'm actually going to demo some of that stuff, I think, on the next call.
Oh, on the next call, yeah. Sure.
So PnP.js client-side libraries updates with Julie.
Thank you, Patrick. So we are scheduled for 2.8 on August 13th. Yes, that is definitely tomorrow. We have a couple new features for the graph. Patrick added an add image field SharePoint feature. There's some small documentation updates and some bug fixes. So lots of good stuff coming out in 2.8. V3 development, I say this every week, but it is well underway. We are having a lot of fun working on that. We're getting some great results, and things are really starting to come together. So it's getting really exciting. If you're interested, there is a V3 branch of the solution, so you can pick that up and check it out and see what's changing and what's happening. If you want to know more details, you can check out that issue 1636, which has the V3 plans and links out to more details for each of the areas. So if you have any interest in helping us out with V3, we're getting pretty close to being able to have lots of people contribute to help us move a little faster. So please do reach out to myself or Patrick or anyone on the team, and we can get you connected. And as always, follow us on M365 PnP.js on Twitter for the latest updates. Back to you, Patrick.
Thank you, Julie, for that. And very excited for folks to start getting a little more visibility into V3. I've got it on my list of to-dos to get a session to do some early feedback for V3. So we'll be announcing that when we can. Next up, CLI for Microsoft 365. I think I'm going to cover this one. So new preview 3.13 with new commands to add single or multiple users to a SharePoint group, a new social champion sample, and minor doc updates and enhancements. You can always try the latest beta either through NPM or through Docker. There's a great Docker image for the M365 CLI. So you can always try that out through Docker, which is a really cool way to get that up and running quickly. And then preview for V4 is also available. That's going to be the next major version, looking for release sometime this fall. So I encourage you to check out everything around the CLI. The reusable components, no big changes here, but continue to make improvements and release new versions with new controls, as well as fixes to existing controls. And this is a great way to jumpstart your SharePoint framework development around either displaying the data using the React controls in the body of your web part or application customizer, and then how the settings work in your web part through the React property controls for those web parts. So I encourage you to check those out. Great way to get your project started quickly. And modern search solution, ak.ms/pnp-modern search for building modern search experiences with flexible web parts. Version 4.3.0 is the July release. That's the latest. And all the new work is going into the V4 branch of things. And then the V3 stuff is really just in long-term support mode there. Not a lot of new features are going to go into the V3 branch. So I encourage you, as you're able, to upgrade to V4. And if you find any issues or anything, of course, please always report that feedback, and that's true across all our projects. Next up are the PnP samples with Hugo.
Awesome, thank you. So if you're just joining us, we have repositories that contain SPFx samples. We've got SPFx extension samples, and we've got SPFx web part samples. Both repositories contain samples that are contributed by the community. They can be full-on solutions, like some of the ones we're going to demo today. And sometimes they can be a very simple concept, like how do I display a user's name, right? Anytime that you need to start a new development task, we recommend you go take a look at these repositories, and you'll find some goodies. Here's the latest updates for the last 2 weeks. The first one is an HTML templated web part by Fabio Franzini. This is one that probably a lot of people are going to be happy about, because people have been looking for a way to insert HTML in pages. Fabio shows a way to kind of create dynamic templates using HTML, and you can embed that into a web part. We have an update to the telephone directory, which just adds the title property, and that's by Mr. Candev. I wasn't able to find that person's real name. We also have an update to the accordion dynamic sections, which allows you to create collapsible sections by Are Gunawan, who added a sort item configuration. And finally, we have by Fabio again, we got a new Fluent UI theme variant. So when you create sections inside of a SharePoint page, you can actually create variants for themes. So you can have a section that's dark, a section that's light. Fabio actually uses the same approach, but at a web part level. So within a web part, you can actually apply variants, which is very cool. So we recommend you go take a look at those samples. We always welcome new contributions, and thank you everyone for doing awesome work. Back to you, Patrick.
Thank you, Hugo. And with that, we're going to move on to our optional picture time. So if you are interested, please turn on your camera, and we're all going to get into whatever scene Vesa has chosen here for us to be in today. I'll turn my camera on so I can be part of it too.
Here we go. Nice shirt, Patrick.
Thank you. Thank you. I wanted to wear something subtle for the call.
Yeah. Indeed. Let's wait for a few more seconds so we get the maximum 50 people in. We have 160, 175 people actually in the call right now. So I think we're hitting the limit. So let's do some hand waving. I'm already recording the screen, so we can do a GIF animation out of this one. So thanks everybody for joining, and thank you for this one. Hopefully by end of this year, we can actually see face-to-face in some of the conferences. We can see already that happening in the US in certain areas. Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. Brilliant. Brilliant. Awesome to see you all. Let's move back on the slides.
So optional picture time is complete. That means we are on to the demos. So first up is going to be Julie Turner and Derek Cash-Peterson. Take it away. You are up.
Sure thing. I will do that right now. All right. So today, Julie and I are going to share with you an app that we built. It's based on executive room reservations. So the concept where, maybe there's only a certain number of conference rooms at an executive level or a specific floor that are only bookable by certain people. I'm Derek, and I'm presenting today with Julie. We both work at Simpraxis Consulting, based out of Boston. And this is the solution that we built. So the main goals here were to provide better visibility into executive room meeting schedules, to provide an opportunity where people who need to book these rooms can book them in the space that they're already working. So they're not leaving, they're not going out to a different system. They can do it already right inside of Teams. It's about reducing that friction for scheduling those events based on both location and size of the group. We're also built in some functionality to support targeting for very specific users, because as you can imagine, that's probably limited to a very small number of people, like executive assistants for the C-suite, and also the ability to share meeting rooms with information for participants. And so with that, I'm going to jump right into the demo. And so you can see here, we've got the upcoming meetings. We've got the strategy session, the leadership meeting. We're going to click on the leadership meeting. And once you click on that, you get a view of the meeting. You get the date and the time of the meeting. You get the title of the meeting, but then you also get the meeting, the name of the room, and then the information, the building number, the building name, the address, the contact phone number for it. Yep, we've also got a map. So if you want to click, you can see the map of the building. You can also click out into driving directions here. So if somebody's coming to your meeting and they're staying in a hotel because they're traveling, they can come here and they can put in the information for their hotel and get driving directions or taxi directions or what have you. I don't know if anyone saw the demo that Julie and I did of our COVID app a couple weeks ago, but this, if you are using that, you can link out to that app as well. We're providing deep links. So it shows that you can sort of deep link from one app to another inside of Teams. On the left-hand side, we've got a picture, a lovely picture of the conference room, but more importantly, actually, is a floor plan letting you know exactly where that room is in relation to the floor that you're on. So you can also see we've got this strategy session, and you can see that there's no room selected. Now there are 15 attendees here. So while the meeting is scheduled, it doesn't have a location. So we need to find the location for that room or for that meeting. And by clicking on it, we're brought to the screen where we've got two main rooms that will fit this number of people. They both happen to be in the building called Main House. So the two conference rooms are Baltic and Atlantic. One holds 20 people and one holds 15. And so we're just going to explore a little bit. We're going to click on Baltic. And so you can see we've got the same information, the name of the building, the name and the location of the building, the contact information, and then we've got some information that helps us request the booking of that room. But we don't like the look of this room for this particular meeting, so we're going to select a different room. We're going to go back and we're going to select Atlantic, and we see the same information here. We've got the picture, we've got that, we've got the floor plan. But now we're going to go ahead and book it. So we can put in our primary contact. Emily is our primary contact. I'm the secondary contact. But because this is an executive level meeting, we're going to add in some AV components here. We're also going to add in our catering options. So this meeting is going to happen during lunchtime. So we're going to have some lunch, and then we're going to have cocktails when we're done. So we're going to have all that brought in. And now we can click the button that says request this room. And that will now book this room. And so you can see in the list of rooms at the top, this now has the Atlantic room booked. Now, what if I just need to see what's out there and what's available for a certain date or time? I can just check general availability. So you can see here, we've got the date and the time. We can select the number of participants in our room, in our meeting. And then we're brought to a list of all the available meeting rooms that can hold that number of people or more. And so then it lets us know, what are our options here? And so we can do that. I think the important thing here is this is more of a sample. We built a really robust service layer here so that you can then extend it if you, say, have a third-party tool that you're using to manage your bookings for those executive conferences. You could, plug it into Exchange. And run it off of the room availability there as well. But it really is an open space where you can sort of take those methods and then you can plug them into your own work. And with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Julie to talk about the Viva Connections piece that we built to go along with this.
Awesome, thank you. So let me share my screen and see if that goes. All right, so Derek just went through sort of a run through of what the app that was built looks like in the Teams space. And of course, that was built with the SharePoint framework. So getting it into Teams is a really easy thing. We can create our own manifest, which we did in this case. And then we took it one step further by using the 1.13 beta release of the SharePoint framework. We've built out the ACE cards that go along with the room reservation system. So over here, what I'm demoing right now is the ACE card that we built for the room reservation app. So if we target this ACE to those people who need it, they can come in and see, hey, this is the next meeting that's happening in our executive conference area. And we can click on the quick view and see quickly information about that meeting, as well as links that deep link us into Teams to fill out the COVID attestation, or deep link us into the meeting details to get that information, or even planning our trip, which again takes us to mapping and such things. And we can even scroll through all the meetings that we have coming up, which at this point is only 2, but you get the point. So all of that can happen then with this card that just sits right in the dashboard. So from a quick view perspective, a user looking at their mobile device with the dashboard right up on their mobile device can see this, click on it, get the details really quickly, get those driving directions, all of that right from the get-go. So I'm going to do a slight code review. So if I come over here, just quickly on the left, I just want to show the source code. So with the SharePoint framework solution, we have the web part for the room reservation, and this is the part that Derek just demoed. What we have in addition is another adaptive card extension, or ACE, with that room reservation piece of it that I just showed you, and all the pieces that are important to that. So I'm gonna hide this so we can see the code a little bit better. But what we start with is the launching point for our solution. One of the things we want to define right away is the state. And so this state is slightly different. If you're used to React, this is slightly different than what you're thinking of. It's not the state for the component, it's the state for the app overall. And it's using the same terminology, so it can be a little confusing, but this is the state of the ACE itself. So we can pass things back and forth between the quick view and the card view. So that helps us keep track of where we are. And so what we need to do when we initialize our ACE is we need to load some the room reservation service layer, and we need to set up what those meetings are that are going to happen either today or in the future. So we're loading those in, and we're also creating those deep links into Teams for the 2 apps. The second one is the COVID one. These GUIDs are fixed. If you use the Teams manifest that come in the SharePoint Framework build, those manifest IDs are fixed. So we can hard code these links in. And so that works pretty handy. So we have the Teams URL for the room reservation system and the Teams URL for the COVID attestation app. And so once we've set this up, then we're going to start, the system automatically launches us into the card view. That's where we start. And so for this one, we're going to use the image card view. And you could see when we showed the demo that we had the nice image on the right side, and we had the title and description, and we have that quick view button. And so all we have to do is define what our data is that goes in there. So in the data method of the card view, we're just going to set the title, the icon, the primary text, and the image URL for what we want to show up. And so that image source is coming from our meeting room ID. We have these hard coded. So back to Derek's other point, this is somewhat, compared to the other 2 solutions that we demoed before, this is a much more sample solution where we have mock data that we're loading in to just get it to work. If you actually found this to be useful and wanted to implement it in your own environment, you want to go back and sort of fix up all of those places where we sort of mocked out some data. Okay, so once we have the card view, if the user then clicks on the quick view button, it takes us to the quick view component. And so when we're in the quick view component, I like to think of the quick view as a mail merge. So the idea, if you've ever done a Word mail merge, you have a data source and you have a template. And so in Word, you would create your template, and then you'd have your data source in Excel or SQL Server or whatever it is. And then you would say merge, and the data merges with the card. And this is exactly the same idea. So there's a couple of methods in here. One is to get the data, and one is to get the template. Now, compared to the COVID sample that we did a few weeks ago, this template is fixed. We know what the card in the quick view is going to look like. So all that we had to do was define the JSON schema for the card. And we can do that using the adaptive card designer. We can get ourselves started there. We go to that website and maybe somebody has that link and can paste it in. I don't have it right now, but you can go to the adaptive card designer, and you can kind of get yourself started so that you kind of see how the card is going to look. Use that as a starting point, and then fix it up to put in all your data points where you want data to merge in to your template. And so you can kind of see here, there's that previous and next buttons, as well as the text block in the center. So the text blocks in the tab and the previous and next buttons are up here. And then we have, the meeting room image, as well as like other meeting details and other meeting buttons. So that's what's in the template. If we come back to the quick view then, so once the template is received, then it needs to merge with the data. So the template then calls the data method, gets the data for whatever the state of our card is. So remember back when we were on the first page, we said this holds the state of our card. Well, one of the pieces of state for our card is what's our current meeting? What meeting of the meetings I have in my list, what meeting is first? And so we know what the current meeting index is. So we're going to get the data for that meeting, and then we're going to create the object that could then be merged into our card to show the particular details for that meeting. And so it merges all that data together, and everything gets shown on the screen. And the last piece of that is those previous and next buttons that kept changing the view. As I clicked on it, it would scroll through all the meetings. And so that's handled by this on action. And so the on action has a submit command. And if we go back to the template and I go back to the top, you can see here that the button has a select an action type of submit. The title is previous, the ID is previous, and then the obvious, obviously down here we have a submit with a next and a next. And if we come back to our quick view, we can see that our action type is submit, okay? And then we have an ID. Remember, and I said the ID of the button was either previous or next. And so I'm going to do one thing if it's the previous button that was clicked, and another thing if the next button was clicked, which is effectively the same thing. I'm just basically taking that array of meetings that we got at the very beginning, and I'm shifting my state to say my current meeting is either the next one or the previous one. And so when I change that state with this line here, and you can see there's two of them, when I set that state, what that does is trigger the quick view card to re-render. Wonderful. Gets the template again, reruns the data method. The current index is different. It gets a new meeting from our array of meetings, merges the data together, and shows the new card. So that is a quick overview of how that ACE behaves. And hopefully that kind of gives everybody a good starting point to get started trying to build some of these ACEs. It's really fun, as Patrick mentioned.
Awesome. Thank you, Julie and Derek. Great demo there. Good to see some ACE dev starting to happen. Like I said, I do encourage folks to start checking this out. I think it's a really neat, way to do some integration work. So excited to see Julie and Derek take that on, and excited to as well see what everyone else out there is going to come up with. But now we will shift over to Hugo, who's got a My List notification extension. You are up, sir.
Excellent. Thank you. So contrary to what the title slide says, my name is Hugo Bernier, but I am here today to present to you a web part sample or an extension sample by Joao Mendes called My List Notifications. Joao is on vacation, and as much as I begged for him to just come out of his vacation to do the presentation, he just preferred that I do the presentation for him. So if you love what he did, it's all Joao's hard work. If you don't like what I'm presenting, it's all my fault. All right, so with that in mind, let's take a look at what he's done. So one of the things that that's kind of like on brand for Joao is he likes to design user interfaces that look really clean and look like they're integrated as part of SharePoint and Office. Here's an example of this. If I asked you where is the component that Joao has designed, like where is it on this screen, you probably would have a hard time figuring it out. But if we zoom in and you take a look at this thing right here, that's actually the component that Joao's designed. And he always does this. He always does really kind of clean interfaces that again, they don't stick out. You don't go like, oh, this is just custom. It was built by, a bad developer. It always looks professional and clean. And that goes a long way because you want to make sure your users don't feel like they have to learn a whole new user interface when they're using your web parts and your extensions. We'll talk a little bit later about whether you should be making changes to these areas of a web part or a page, but that's for a bit later. All right. Now, when you click on this, we'll show you in a real demo what it does, but it opens this My List notification, which actually keeps track of all the notifications, all the things that have happened in the lists that you have subscribed to. So, here's an example of a whole bunch of notifications as taken from the screenshots that Joao has provided. But let me show you a real demo instead. All right, so if I switch to my personal SharePoint and I have the thing installed here, and I have here a list of libraries. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and click on this. And it says, well, you have no notifications because I haven't created the subscription yet. Let me go create a subscription and let me go search for, and let's just say documents, right? So now what I've done is I've actually created the subscription to a document. or to the document library. Let me close this. And now I want to make it clear, what I'm going to be showing you here, I'm not using magic shortcut keys. I'm not, using videos or anything like this. This is actually happening in real time. I'm going to go to this library and I'm going to upload some files. There. David will appreciate that I use this image for him. I upload an image here, and it says it's uploaded, right? And look what happened. Immediately, I didn't do anything. I didn't refresh the screen. Immediately, my notifications kicked in. Before I do another, I go look at those notifications. Let me just add, there you go, another picture. And I'll just go do this and let's see what happens here. Now, this is the part where I might have to distract you with some things. No, it's actually pretty fast. All right. So once the notification has been received, you'll actually notice that I actually get a message here. So the same thing would happen if I was deleting a document from a list that I'm subscribing to. If I was modifying, actually, let me just go modify a document and show you what I mean. Let me just go right here. I'm going to edit the metadata. And this is going to be called Ugly Dog. And I just want to make sure I'm actually editing the right picture, because that would be insulting to David. There you go. And there. So I just made a change to the metadata, and eventually what should happen if the demo gods are with me is I should get a notification. There you go. I get a notification that something's changed. So that's kind of cool. It's non-intrusive, right? And it's a great way for people to stay up to date with what's going on. So again, I can go here. I can actually go click on the actual documents to open them. I can remove the notifications, or I can clear all notifications. So that's pretty much what the extension does. And because it's an extension, you can set it up so that it's automatically deployed to all pages in a modern site. And you can also set it up so it gets deployed to every site collection in your tenant if you want to. Very cool. It's not like you have to install a web part or do anything like that. All right. So how does it work, right? Probably the worst thing to do when you want to do these kinds of interface is to do the equivalent of, like, if you're waiting for someone to call you, you don't pick up your phone and go hello, and then nobody called. I'm just gonna wait, and then 30 seconds later I'm gonna pick up my phone and say hello, right? No, that's not how these types of communications work. Same thing here. We're not using a timeout or a loop or anything like that to actually see whether there's been changes. We're actually using notifications to do that. And just like when your phone rings, you normally answer, except if it's me, I don't ever answer my phone. But when your phone rings, you answer the phone, and only when your phone rings, you answer your phone. Same thing here. Only when there's a notification that happens, do you need to actually update the screen to actually say, hey, there's a new notification. So it's really magic. Actually, it's not really magic. It's something called socket.io. So what's socket.io? I apologize in advance if I butcher this. I'm trying to compress a lot of information in 15 minutes, but socket.io, basically imagine if you had a server and then you had what we'll call a client. So like, and maybe you're writing a chat application, right? Socket.io, the example is always chats. So let's just use that. Let's pretend you're writing a chat application. You are the client and you basically log in to Teams or whatever chat application you want to use, and you say, hey, Mr. Server, I'm ready. Anytime you have any messages for me, please let me know, right? But also, if I want to send a message, I can just send a message to other clients. So all the other clients do the same thing. Everybody that wants to receive the notifications log in, and they all notify the server, the Socket.io server, to say, hey, if you have any messages, please let me know. So what happens when one of the clients, like the one that's highlighted here, sends a message to the server? Then the server basically notifies, it broadcasts to all the clients that have described or subscribed to this notification, and all the clients I receive a message. That's like the super quick version of what socket.io works. It does. Now you're going to, come into my office and say, Hugo, why would I implement a server? And I would say, well, first of all, get out of my house because my office is in my house. But you don't need to implement a server because behind the scenes, Microsoft and the Graph team are actually implementing a socket.io service that you can use to actually send notifications to your clients. So really all we need to worry about is implementing the client, which gets the notifications and subscribes to the notifications. Let's look at the code. And by the way, if you have any questions, I can't see the chat. Feel free to interrupt me, or Patrick, Vesa, David, if you wanted to interrupt me if there's questions, I will do my best to ignore them. All right, so if we look at the code, there's lots of code here, but one of the big things that we do in the code here that Joao does is in his use MS Graph API component, he actually has this thing called get list of socket IOs. And what he does, he actually makes a graph call that goes to the site, the lists, the list ID, or in the case that I use my document list. And then it looks at the subscriptions for that list, and it looks specifically at the socket IO subscriptions. This is not magic. This is actually built in Graph behind the scene. And so it allows you to get all the subscriptions to a list, but it also allows you to reconnect to those subscriptions using socket.io. Now, within his use socket.io component, he's got this magical thing where he uses socket.io-client, which is a library that makes everything a lot easier for you to connect to socket.io. And within that, he's got just a little function or a hook that is called use socket.io, which really gets a notification that is passed, or a handler that gets passed. And the handler just takes care of, once it's actually received all the notifications, in this case, we get a notification on when we get connected, and we get a notification when we actually receive a notification from a library. We then call the notification handler that was passed in. Now, where do we pass in this notification handler? Well, there's a my notification component that actually just does that. Right here, we say use socket, and we pass it a handle notification. And so that's actually how we're able to subscribe to socket notifications. And I'll show you how we create those socket notifications very shortly. But let's look at what we do when we handle these notifications. When we handle the notifications, we basically just do a little callback function so that we can do all this stuff asynchronously, and we're not pausing the screen or making the screen less responsive. We actually just go get the list of notifications, and for each notification, we actually get the site information, we get the list information, and we get the list of activities. And then we just put that in a nice big array of activities so that we can render it later. And then not sure why I had that highlighted. There you go. And so if we go back to the use MS Graph API component again, so on the use MS Graph API, we do the get list of activities. How do we get the list of activities? Because the first thing we did so far, it was using socket.io to actually get notified that we have a list of activities, but we're not getting the list of activities. When we do get list of activities, we actually go to that list and we say, hey, show me what's happened since last time. And this is what we do that. We do that using the Graph client, and we call the get list of activities list. All right, I need to go a little bit faster here because I'm eating someone else's time. So that little clock thing, or clock bell thing with the notifications, how do we do that? Well, really, it's the my notifications component, and really all we do is we still use socket.io. We get a handler for the notifications, and when we get a notification that says, hey, you have something that needs to be displayed, we just kind of create a little stack here with a little bell and a little number. That's really all we do. Again, we're not constantly refreshing. We're not using a timer. We're just getting a notification. All right, and that list thing at the top on the side here is the same idea. We just kind of, when we get the notification, we actually go get the list of notifications from a secret place, actually. And this is actually one of the things that Alex Tarantiev has demonstrated in the past. But what we're doing is we're actually storing the list of settings from the extension and the personalized setting for a user in a app settings.json file, which is stored in the user's OneDrive folder. I'm running out of time, so I'm not going to get to show you the OneDrive document here, but that's a great thing. It allows us to actually have kind of roaming settings that are not stored in a cookie or are not stored in a session variable or anything like that. We're actually storing all that in a settings.json, and we're reading all that information. All right, let's continue. So when we get the badge, we actually get the navigation, and we create a stack of all the badges with all the buttons, and then all the individual notifications that say this document was added, this document was modified. That's really all we're doing here. And then we render that in a panel that has actions for dismissing notification and for opening things. All right, I am skipping straight through to the end of my presentation here. You can actually find the code at this super long URL here, or you can search for aka.ms/SPFx extensions. There's also an awesome blog post written by Joao that describes, I'm sure much more eloquently, how he's built the solution. This solution is awesome. I strongly recommend you go take a look at it. Thanks everyone for your time, and thank you, Joao, for always being awesome. Back to you, Patrick.
All right, thank you, Hugo, for that fantastic demo and explanation there. Very cool techniques and a very slick implementation, but we want to move quickly over to Giuliano. Sir, if you are ready, you could go ahead and take over the screen.
Yes, I'm going to share my screen. So first of all, I have to apologize for my voice. I have the flu, but I'll go forward. So I'm glad to have seen that Hugo has already showed us something that I'm going to demonstrate in this quick demo. So my name is Giuliano De Luca. I am an independent technical architect. Here you can find all references if you want to reach me out. Feel free. There is also my YouTube channel where you can find 128 videos now. I started 1 year ago. Okay, let's move now with the solution. So what I want to demonstrate today is how you can save user settings or preferences in OneDrive. There is a special folder in OneDrive called Apps where you can store data. So this is a very common scenario when you deal, for example, with the favorite DEM. So you want to make available the dark and light DEM functionality on your application, or maybe you want to just store temporary secrets or any other user preferences. So this is a very nice approach. What I'm going to demo here is a SharePoint Framework solution. It's a web part, but of course, using Microsoft Graph API, you can use any other kind of web application that you can integrate in Microsoft 365. Now, as I said, I'm going to save user settings in this special folder called Apps in OneDrive. How we can do that? There is an endpoint in the Microsoft Graph API that you can consume, and this is an example. So you can put here app root, so you are referencing the folder apps. Then it's a good practice define your folder in this folder, so it's more easy to find your data. And then what I'm going to do is create a JSON file with all my attributes and properties. when you load your application, first of all, you have to load your data. So you have to query the JSON file stored in OneDrive. And you can use this endpoint in order to get the download URL. Why we have to do that? Because basically it's a different domain, and in order to avoid coarse issues, you have to have and you have to use and fetch another URL. In fact, when you get this download URL, we can see in the next slide, you get something like that. So you have this URL, and then you have a temporary authentication. So this is a token, a valid token that you can use to download your content. In my case, what I'm going to show you is I'm going to save 3 properties: the theme, the favorite theme of the application, then a token, and finally a preference one. Okay, let's jump now on the demo. I have here my browser instance, and what I have here, this is my personal space on OneDrive. I'm going to now delete this folder just to show you how it works. So I'm going to click on the 3 dots and then delete. Now I'm going to Microsoft Teams. I'm going to refresh the page. Okay, let's sign in again. So I pinned this SharePoint Framework solution here in the left pane as a personal app. It's called the cross-device user data. And here we go. This is my application. And I have already some preferences. So I'm going to delete again this folder because previously I was not properly logged in. Now this folder is removed. I can jump, for example, on Teams and then open again this app. And now I have this form. This is very easy. I have just 3 properties here. As I said, I am able to set my favorite theme of this app. I can just add a value here on this field, and then another one. This would be SPFx. Let me open the dev toolbar so we can see on the backstage the call, and then I'm going to click on Save Current User. So this is the call, and let me jump on the headers. We can see that this is the payload of the request. I passed these properties, which represents exactly what I saved here. Now going on OneDrive and refreshing the page, I have this new folder just created. As I said before, it's a good practice to create another folder. Now I'm using the SharePoint Framework, so then this is the app principal, SharePoint Online Client Extensibility Web Application Principal, and here we go. This is my folder that I just created, and then I have my file settings JSON. So we have seen in the demo before that Joao has used exactly. I have seen in the code some minutes ago that Joao has used exactly this kind of approach to keep track of notification. So as we can see here, I have the theme that I set, the token, and the preference one. Now I'm going to open this tool, which is very cool. It's called Let's View, and it's very fantastic when you want to mirror your device. I'm going now to open the same application, the same personal app on my Android device. Here I have cross-device user data. I'm going to open the same application, and as we can see, we have exactly the same app that show up with the properties that I saved before. So I can And of course, change value here. Let me add additional number, or let me type SharePoint and then save current user data. If I jump back here on OneDrive and if I refresh the page, normally the change happens in real time, but it's always good to refresh the page. And now we can see that the new values that I added on my Android device. Okay, let's jump to the code because I see that we don't have a lot of time. So all we need to do here is just to define the permission. The Microsoft Graph permission required are files read-write. So this is what we have to specify in the package solution. Then let me jump in the core of the solution. I am here in the function component. And so what I have here, I have a bunch of user states. And so here I have a function get user data. And this is exactly the endpoint that I consume in order to get the download URL. Once I have the download URL, I can fetch this URL in order to get the JSON. So then at the end, I have the temp, the token, and the preference one, and I can display this data in the form. When I have to save this data, I have to execute, I used here the Microsoft Graph Client Factory, the Microsoft Graph Client, which is included in the base library of SharePoint Framework. And there is this endpoint that you can use by specifying content at the end. And then in the put method, you have just to specify your JSON. Once you have done that, you are able to save your JSON file in your OneDrive. So I would say this is a very nice approach to save user settings, but also so I think it's a very, Joao has used a very clever approach in order to keep track of notification about users. So this is all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for giving the chance to demonstrate this sample. I already posted the URL of my sample in the chat window. And so back to you guys.
Awesome. Thank you very much. 3 great demos today from Julie, Derek, Hugo, and Giuliano. And I want to thank everybody for joining our call today. Our next call, or this recording will be available in about 24 hours on our YouTube channel. You can always follow us on Twitter. Our next call for SPFx will be in 2 weeks, August 26th at the same time. Our next general dev call will be next Thursday, August 19th at the same time. Hope to see all of you back for those. And again, we'll be updating our community calls as we go into the fall. So these are the current links. And again, we'll get everything updated and straightened out for everyone. So thank you, everybody, for attending the call. Thank you for watching the call if you weren't able to make it live, and look forward to talking to you soon. Have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.